a brand new 98.7 WMZQ listener, Michael J. here along with Ty Bailey, I just want to welcome you to something that we do every year. It's our St. Jude Radiothon, powered by Dulles Glass. And Ty, this is your first year doing this with us, and I'm really excited to be able to introduce you to a guy who's become a friend of mine over the last several years, having been involved with St. Jude now. Tim Weigner, who is military, retired military, works for the federal government, and lost his son, Philip, to cancer. Welcome. It's great to see you again.
Always a pleasure to be back to support this.
Last year you were here, and I know you remember this so vividly. The phones blew up at 800-795-1800 when Philip started telling, when Tim started telling me the story about Philip. And we even had companies calling in, government contractors who were willing to match. And, I think it's all because everyone fears for the lives of their kids. Your other son is healthy and fine, and tell me about it.
Yeah, so this really started back in 2010, the same week. It was during the St. Jude Radiothon for WMZQ, and I heard a Rascal Flatts song, and it got me. So I called in, and what we found out 2 months later was words that parents never want to hear. My son had an extended stomach, and we took him to doctors, and doctors did a bunch of x-rays, and then they came back and said, we found a tumor about the size of a Coke bottle, and it shocked us, and it was like, and I'm looking at my son, and the first thing he said, Dad, am I gonna die?
So you called when your son was healthy?
Yeah.
Just like we've asked so many people to do, and then it turned to a situation where you had to go to St. Jude.
Yeah. 2 months later, on Valentine's Day.
That's crazy.
And it was like, okay, and I wasn't even thinking about this, and so we went through this whole process, what are we gonna do? And when he was diagnosed, it was late stage 4 neuroblastoma. And for his age, somebody who was much older than the typical child.
How old was Philip at the time?
He was actually just turned 20.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was a childhood cancer, they treated him as a pediatric patient, but they didn't have a treatment plan for somebody that age. He was case number 52 in the last 50 years.
Can you believe that?
Of 18.
And this is a real serious situation you find yourself in. The irony of that is incredible. He's listening to WMZQ, he hears the Radiothon like you're listening right now, and it gives me chills. 2 months later, Philip is diagnosed. So take us from there.
So from there, we bounced around. We talked to a lot of folks because I work for the federal government. There was some resources that we were able to network with and find out some additional information. And one of the things that we learned about was what was called the COG, the Children Oncology Group, which is a group of all these research institutions, which St. Jude is a part of. And they came collectively together to say, now what is a treatment plan that we can put them on? Normal or abnormal. So we started up this regimen at a local hospital, and it just went from there. And what we benefited from was research that St. Jude was able to provide. And so we went through the whole gamut that a lot of the parents go through, the chemotherapy, the radiation treatment, the numerous surgeries, the gamma knife radiation treatment, the stem cell transplants, the MIBG transplants, all kinds of clinical trials, and it just gets worse. In that first year, we thought it was going to be difficult. That same year was also the year my mother-in-law passed. My mother had a heart attack. My sister was in a car accident involving a semi-truck, and then our dog had a stroke. We told them it just gets worse, and when you think it could be bad, it can get bad.
It's when it rains, it pours again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you said the thing about the research, because we've been saying that for days now,
Yes.
that everything happens in Memphis, but it comes to help us right here,
sure
right
does.
now, when it's necessary. And I just think of when I get a headache, or I get a weird, my hand fell asleep. Let me get on the internet and figure out what's wrong with me. And the course of treatment options are very plentiful, and I know nothing about any of them. Everything you just mentioned, I can't imagine you knew what that was, and the doctor said, here's how we're going to treat your son.
The gamma knife or whatever else.
Right, absolutely. And it's all thanks to the research that they're doing at St. Jude.
1-800-795-1800. If you want to jump onto WMZQ's Facebook right now, we're streaming this live so that you can get to know Tim. And where are you from originally?
I was a military brat, so I bounced around. My dad was in the Coast Guard as an aviation machinist, so we bounced around. In San Diego, I called home as a child, but now I call home Poolsville, Maryland.
So this is a gentleman who served our country, in my mind, another one of our heroes, and still works for the federal government. And, you know, not everyone has a child that survives at St. Jude. The way I look at your situation with Philip is that they were able to give you more time with Philip.
Definitely. And I was just sharing with one of the people here that, you know, when we were in the hospital, patients next to us had a child that was about a day old, and the child was diagnosed neuroblastoma. And we met them in the hallway, and the parents always have this shocked look. And we went through that stage, and we said, you know, come on, let's go walk the hallway. We want to share some resources that we have. And they kept apologizing to us, saying, you know, we're so sorry about your son. And we looked at them, and, you know, and we said, you know what, you don't need to apologize. We've had our son for over 18 years. You've had your son for one day. We are sorry for you, because we have memories. And so it kind of puts things in perspective, and that was one of the things that my son really passed on to us. And you say, I'm a hero? No, it's these kids that are heroes. He always looked at it and said, you know what, Dad, this is bad, and it's gonna get worse, but it could be worse than this.
So I don't want to take you to the hardest part of this, but I got to ask. I came to the realization today, and I know this is not even close to being a good analogy, but I sat on the phone bank for a bit, and I realized that the volunteers are really working their rear ends off. You know, I had never done that before. And I started thinking, you know, that's probably how I have no idea what it's like, because I've got 4 healthy children. What was the hardest part? You tell me. I mean, you're telling me that it wasn't the hardest part with Philip in having to tell an adult child that they're not going to make it. There was something harder than that.
There's something much harder than that, is when the doctors come in and say, you know what, there's nothing else we can do. And that's when you realize something's going to change, and it may change very quickly. And my son was wise enough to know, because he saw my father go through his cancer treatment, and when the doctors came in and said, you know what, it's time to go home, we're going to put you on hospice, and he knew right away, and that's when things changed in the environment in the room. So really the hardest thing for us to do was sit down with him and say, you know what would you like to have done? What are your wishes? And we had to sit down and write his will, and we did it collectively together. So, you know, he was a Boy Scout, very active. We did a lot of camping. He's hiked all over the United States, very adventurous, along with his brother. He's worked summer camp. So he said, what would you like to do? And he said, well, I would like to be cremated, but here's where I would like to have my ashes spread. And we went through the list: the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, Sugarloaf Mountain here, just up the road, because that's where he did his Eagle Project, a stupa just outside of Poolsville, because that's where his high school friends' ashes are spread, San Diego at my brother's grave site, Iuka, Kansas at my father's grave site, Pikes Peak, and we either had to hike or drive. We couldn't take the cog train, and he's been up there 3 times. And then on top of Baldy Mountain at the Scout Ranch in New Mexico, and we had to hike that. And what he was doing, he was putting us on a journey. And it was a very long journey. It took almost 1.5 years to do. I had family with us, very supportive, and when we did the Baldy Mountain, I was with a scout troop, and it was my 3rd time going back, and they knew why I was there, and they were very supportive. All the scouts had Superman buttons that they had on their backpacks, and when we got up there, they were very quiet, and that's when I had to finally say goodbye.
You know, to be a partner in hope, we've been saying it, you know, it's about saving lives, and not all of them get to be saved, unfortunately. Right now, it's 1 in 5 are not. Yeah. And one of the most amazing things I think about this in meeting you is because, you know, Michael's been telling me about you since the day I started and we started talking about Radiothon. He said, I've got a guy, he's incredible. And the fact that once you become a partner in hope, that's lovely. But once you deal with St. Jude, you come back as a partner in hope today. You called.
You're a family
You're
member.
here helping St. Jude because of the experience that you had, and in your child's memory. And there's no value financially that we can put on that, because you're helping other kids be saved by you coming here and sharing your story.
And then I'm sitting at the phone bank, and I'm listening, and he's on the phone donating not only his time, but is money. And if this isn't someone who convinces everyone listening that this is one of the most valuable charities on the planet, with one of the most important missions on the planet, I don't know what else will.
Become a partner in Hope now. You can be like Tim and you can come and hang out with us and tell us stories, or you could just call 1-800-795-1800. Call now, 1-800-795-1800, or you can text WMZQ to 785-833. But when you call or text and become a partner in Hope, you're giving us the opportunity to hopefully save all 5 out of 5 children.
So now there's a happy ending, if there is such a way to put a happy ending on this. Your son is expecting a baby.
In June.
We're gonna have a grandpa next year.
I like it.
Grandpa Tim. Let's hear it for Grandpa Tim over here.
Woo!
That's awesome. So life is full circle. I mean,
Always.
there's happy days and there's sad days.
Yep.
You know, what is the coping mechanism that a parent goes through? What do you develop? How do you survive? How do you go on when you lose your son?
How do I survive? Every year, I shave my head in September for Childhood Cancer Awareness. So the last time you saw me, I had a shaved head.
You really come back quite fast.
I'm fortunate.
full head right
It comes
now.
back gray though. Every year, my wife shaves her head, and she's been doing that for a while. Every year, we do a lot of donations and fundraisers. Getting ready to make a toy run to a local Ronald McDonald's house. We reach out to people. We just say, you know, get paid forward, because you never know when it's going to affect your child. And the odds of 1 in 282 is just brutal.
That's what we're talking about. This is real life stuff here today. And we are dealing with precious minutes left. 4:22. We're only going till 7 o'clock. You can do the math. We need your help as a partner in Hope at $20 a month now. You know, we would like to help save all the other Phillips in the world. Unfortunately, there's some other situations that doctors can't solve. Neuroblastoma. Yet. But, you know, these are very difficult problems to comprehend for the doctors. I mean, how many different treatment plans did you guys go through?
I couldn't even name how many, because you start off with the regimen of chemo, which is brutal, and the new technology coming out is trying to move away from the chemo, the radiation treatment, and then the stem cell transplant, and then they're going to genome testing. So there's so many different types. Philip had to do the MIBG treatment up at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, where they actually put radiation chemicals in you, and you live in a lead-lined room because of that.
Lisa from St. Jude, isn't this the coolest guy in the world?
Tim, you're pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie about it.
Now, last year, we know what happened. People were listening to a story. I saw you over on the phones. What's going on over there?
So some of our listeners might remember from last year, we had a donor who called and who wanted to do a match in Philip's memory, and we actually had a similar situation this year. Somebody who's a military contractor in the area wants to match donations, but only for a limited amount of time.
Okay.
Yeah. It's going to be for the next 15 minutes.
That's it?
Yep.
So what time do we have? When are we going to start this? You want to start at 4:30 maybe, or what?
Yeah, let's do that, because we're going to be going commercial free.
Okay.
So we can rock through 15 minutes non-stop of let's just make some money and match it for St. Jude.
Well,
What do you think?
you know, I think we can start it now.
All right, let's
All right,
go. Then let's
let's do
go. What time? We're going to start this with the phone bank at what time? What time do you got right now? 4:24?
Yep.
All right, so 4:24 for 15 minutes.
All right, let's do it.
Every dollar, it's happening again. Every time you get on the radio, it blows up the phones. You realize
We
that?
might
That's
give you
a
a
good
show.
thing. That's a good
How do you
thing.
feel about afternoon?
No, you
I've
know,
only been there 10 days, but you can have it.
I
if you're
can't
gonna
have
be
my
this
wife
good.
calling in because she just found out I donated again.
I really believe that Philip is still with us. I believe, you know, and I know his dad believes that, as he sits here with a picture of him in his lap. Philip is still with us. You know, we just kind of go through a transformation where we're maybe in a different, you know, at a different place, but he's still in your heart.
Always.
I can see it in your eyes. So, okay, let's start it officially now, 4:25.
All right.
You've got 15 minutes to call 800-795-1800 because of our friend Tim, and in honor of Philip. Every partner in Hope is going to double. is
Every
double.
partner in hope. Every partner in hope is going to be double.
All right, so you have got a perfect 15-minute window to call 800-795-1800. A military contractor now challenging you and putting 100% more money on the table for St. Jude.
1-800-795-1800. I can't say the number enough. 1-800-795-1800.
We're talking about a young man who we lost, who at the end of his life sat there with his family and planned the spreading of his ashes through cremation. What is it? I know Philip's here in this room with us today. What would Philip want everyone to know?
He would want everybody to know that, people have it rough in life. But the real gift is the gift of giving to somebody else so they can have a much better life. And if you have that opportunity, no matter how bad it could be, if you can give just a simple gift of kindness, such as through the donation to St. Jude, that is the gift to do.
Well, this is the time to do it, too. We have 13 minutes left. This company is only going to match until 4:40. 4:40, that's the time, on the Crop Metcalf phone bank here at 98.7 WMZQ. Families never receive a bill from St. Jude. And Tim, you can tell me about that. What was your situation with insurance when you got Philip to the hospital?
Well, with the insurance, again with Philip, the benefit was all the research that we ended up with from St. Jude, and that helped out a whole lot. So we don't have to worry about that.
Right. So, and the treatments invented at St. Jude are spread freely everywhere. I'm sure, you said you went through many different protocols and different procedures or whatever, and you dealt with a lot of other doctors too.
A whole lot of other doctors and other hospitals. So we were up at Johns Hopkins, we were up at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, we were down at Texas Children's Hospital, they networked with Cincinnati Hospital, Seattle Hospital, all these hospitals, and you find out who are researchers. And we were blessed to go to a neuroblastoma conference, and we got to meet one of the researchers from St. Jude that assisted us. That helped so much more. But we kind of felt awkward because we were one of two families in this group of families. We were the one of two that lost children. And that's not what they want to hear. They want to, what's the hope that we have?
Well, for other people listening that hear neuroblastoma, what exactly is that?
So it's a cancer that actually starts in the bone marrow. And it migrates through the body, through the blood system and the nervous system. And if you've ever seen a scan of somebody with neuroblastoma, you'll usually see it in the legs, the hips, the heart. It usually forms a hard tumor in the stomach area. It can migrate usually up in the shoulders and the bones of your skull. And so when we saw the scans, it was like it's everywhere. And that's one of the reasons he was diagnosed late stage 4. So usually the first surgery is to remove the adrenal gland.
Have doctors made any inroads that you know of at St. Jude? Where are the progresses?
Yeah,
what are the inroads?
So the biggest progress that they're making right now is trying to move away from the chemo treatment, because chemotherapy is intended to kill something. And I know at one point in Philip's chemo treatment, we didn't think he was going to make it. The doctors were really assured that he was going to make it, and he survived it. So they're really trying to go to non-chemo treatment that's not as harsh and hard on the body, and the children can recover much more quickly.
And are survival rates moving?
The survival rates, I will tell you, is getting much better. The younger you are for neuroblastoma, the higher survivability. But when you're like 18 years old, survivability rate's about 20% for 2 years.
You hear what he's saying, 20% survival. You've got to do something about that.
We're doing it right now.
800-795-1800. There is 11 minutes left in a matching opportunity. This is huge. This is